Hello and welcome to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about a subject that I have to admit I'm not that familiar with. And it is Michael Saylor and his company, Microstrategy. Over the course of the last couple weeks, as most of you know, Bitcoin has reached an all-time high of over $100,000. And so it's drawn a lot of media scrutiny and a lot of attention to the subject of Bitcoin and the direction of where it's going. So what it did was basically spark my interest in looking into what MicroStrategy is doing a little bit more, because I readily admit that I don't understand it. And so as a result, we can dig into it together, and hopefully we'll both learn something here. So Michael Saylor, as you may or may not know, founded MicroStrategy some time ago, started out as a software company. It has now become nothing more than a holding company for Bitcoin. And in fact, he's one of the largest, if not the largest owner of Bitcoin, anywhere in the world. And how he did this and how he's doing this, I think, is very interesting, regardless of if you are a proponent or a backer of Bitcoin, or if you think it's worthless, as Warren Buffett does. So let's take a look at it and try to figure out, is Michael Saylor a genius on the level of Leonardo da Vinci, or is he one of the biggest charlatans on the planet today? Okay, so as we look at this, looking at their website, you can see it's their mission is to make every enterprise a more intelligent enterprise. And this is how they're pitching themselves. They talks about the company culture, appears to be a real company. As you take a look at the leadership, there he is, Michael Saylor, founder of the company. There's a description of his background. Truthfully, you look at his background, he's no slouch. He served as chairman of the board and also the founder and chief executive of the company going back to 1989. Graduated from MIT. He was in the Air Force Reserve Training Corps. Impressive guy. He was in a rock band. And he's done a lot of different things. He graduated with highest honors from MIT. That's impressive. He formed the company. He's got 48 patents. And he's written books and all kinds of things. So, the guy is certainly not a slouch in any respect. And as you go on the website, if you take a look at this clip, this pretty much sums up how the company presents itself anyway on their website.
Data analytics is the lifeblood of successful modern organizations of all sizes. But most people are not data analysts, and fewer still know how to translate data into action. So, how do you turn raw data into the trusted insights you need without spending hours poring over endless spreadsheets? Welcome to MicroStrategy One, the open, cloud-native, AI-integrated business intelligence platform that connects everyone, everywhere, so your people get all of the insights they need when they need them.
Next, we take a look at the stock, where the stock has been. As you can see, it's a situation where the stock has just gone up tremendously in the last year, exactly tracking what Bitcoin has done. And if we go back 3 years, you can see there was absolutely nothing happening until 2024, when their stock of Bitcoin increased and Bitcoin increased tremendously. So this is why, when you see a chart like this, this is why there's all the public attention, because the public always gets interested in a company after there's been an enormous price rise. When there's nothing going on in the company, of course, nobody has any interest. So I think it's important to listen to what Michael Saylor has to say, listen to his business case for Bitcoin. And usually on the channel, I talk about subjects that I feel that I know something about, having a financial background, having a Wall Street background. I feel that I'm qualified to talk about stocks and talk about investments and things like that. But when it comes to crypto, I readily admit I am not an expert, although I'm interested in learning more about it. So that's really why I'm making this video, so that we can both learn together, mano y mano, so to speak. So let's take a look at this clip. This is a recent interview with Michael Saylor, and then I'll react to the clip after it's played.
I'm going to be buying more Bitcoin. I'm going to be buying Bitcoin at the top forever. I joked with Dave Portnoy today. He said, I missed it at 10,000. I missed it at 20,000. I missed it at 100,000. I said, Dave, it's still less than $1 million a coin. You're getting a 90% discount from $1 million a coin. I'm sure that I will be buying Bitcoin at $1 million a coin, probably $1 billion a day of Bitcoin at $1 million a coin. And so I think it's a very simple idea. It's just keep buying Bitcoin with your spare capital. It's going to appreciate against the dollar forever.
Okay, so let's just stop there for a second. When somebody talks like that, when somebody is bullish to the point of being insanely bullish, you have to kind of ask yourself, what's going on here? And apparently, what he's essentially saying is price doesn't matter, just buy Bitcoin and it's always going to go up. For an asset that arguably doesn't have any intrinsic value as compared to, say, a stock of a company where you have your proportionate share of the earnings and sales, so there's real value there, I think it's a reasonable position to take, or at least a question to ask, as, other than the fact that people perceive it as being valuable, we're pretty sure it's a commodity, it's not a stock, and we're pretty sure it's a speculation because there's no intrinsic value. Now, if somebody in the audience out there can explain to me the intrinsic value, and I understand blockchain, and I understand that financial transactions can be recorded on blockchain, and that can be very efficient. There's many uses for blockchain. I understand all that. But as it relates to Bitcoin, as far as I am concerned, I have seen no rational explanation for why there is intrinsic value in Bitcoin. But yet you have a guy here who is insanely bullish, okay? Causes me pause.
Well, and Michael, you kind of alluded to this, that you don't try and time the market here. You're just the strategy through Microstrategy is to just keep buying consistently, regularly, no matter what the price is.
Yeah, I look at it like Manhattan real estate. The year is 1650, and if you had a chance to buy it in every decade from 1650 to today, wouldn't you just keep buying it? If you didn't have to pay property tax and you could hold it, you would just keep accumulating it forever. There's never a bad time to buy it. There's a Saylor tracker. You can look at it. It just shows we bought at every price point, every quarter, at the highs, at the lows, at the mids. I bought it every week for the past 4 weeks in a size billion or more. I'm going to just keep buying it. And it's not that complicated. I expect that it'll be the most valuable thing in the world 100 years from now. So why wouldn't you just keep accumulating it?
There may be many great arguments for why Bitcoin is valuable, but comparing it to Manhattan real estate, buying it in the 1600s, I just don't think that's analogous because, while it does share the characteristic of scarcity, right, and a finite amount of it, which is one of the selling points of Bitcoin, you can build buildings on land and you can collect rent and income from land and from buildings that are constructed upon it after developing the land, and you are creating real value in doing that because there's intrinsic value related to the rent that you collect over a number of years. So I think what he's doing here is he just keeps saying there's all this value, and he's saying that you don't have to understand where the value is because it just keeps going up. I mean, that to me is a very sophomoric explanation for why there's value in it. To me, he hasn't really explained the value at all.
And Michael, obviously the move since the election has been powerful. Trump is moving back into the White House. He clearly positioned himself, as an ally of Bitcoin, an ally of crypto. What would you like to see, Michael, his priorities be now, his policy priorities?
Well, I mean, I think low regulation, low tax, pro-innovation policies give people, specifically with regard to digital assets. If we have a digital assets framework that supports digital commodities, digital securities, digital tokens, digital ABTs, digital currencies, digital NFTs, so that people can innovate in the United States of America and spread those assets everywhere in the world, I think that'll be good for the world and good for the United States.
Well, a more favorable regulatory regime will definitely be more favorable to the crypto promoters, such as Michael Saylor, but and that really has led to a lot of the bullishness and a lot of the rallies that we've seen in the cryptocurrencies since it's been evident that Trump was going to win the election. So I agree with him there, and I don't think expanding the regulatory regime and improving regulation is necessarily a bad thing. I think it'd be a good thing.
Bitcoin is emerging as the world's reserve capital network. If you want to store your capital for the long term and you live in Africa or Russia or China or South America or even the US, your choice is local real estate or local stocks or Bitcoin. Well, people are realizing that Bitcoin is better than real estate. It's better than stocks. There's not a single company or real estate property in Africa that you would rather own for the long term than Bitcoin. So the very simple idea is buy 20 or 25% of the Bitcoin network on behalf of the US government, catalyze the development of that world reserve capital network, and then let all the Chinese and the Russians and the foreigners sell all their other assets and buy Bitcoin, and then the money flows into the United States. If you want to put a great twist on it, dump your gold, sell all the US gold, buy Bitcoin, then the trade is free because you could buy 5 million Bitcoin for the cost of the gold. You will demonetize the entire gold asset class, and our enemies hold gold in their banks, so their assets would go to zero. Our assets would go to $100 trillion, and we would control the world's reserve capital network as well as the world's reserve currency network.
Okay, I think what he just said right there kind of really invalidates a lot of his thesis. Sure, if I lived in Africa and I had a currency that was worth nothing, yes, I'd rather have Bitcoin than that currency. Or if I lived in a country where the currency was constantly debased through devaluation, yeah, I'd rather own Bitcoin. But what he said about gold, his analogy, selling all the gold and putting it all into Bitcoin, and I mean, come on, that's, you can be a bull, but this guy is so bullish, and he's not really explaining what the value is. And for me, this whole idea that Bitcoin is a store of value is completely ridiculous, because it's exactly correlated with high risk, high beta assets. When the Fed is too dovish and there's too much liquidity in the market, like now, guess what? Bitcoin goes up. It's a highly speculative asset. It's not a store of value. I mean, come on, guy. If you have a business case to make for it, make it. Don't just keep saying all these superlatives over and over again just because, you're talking up your own book. That's obviously what he's doing. Okay, I've had enough of this guy. So what I want to do is I want to now go into some comments that Tom Lee made. because I think it'll give you some insight into the mechanism of how this guy is either creating all this value or creating some kind of a Ponzi scheme. Okay, I don't know which at this point, but check out what Tom Lee has to say. He's a very intelligent guy, and then I'll comment on that afterwards.
Microstrategy, around 5 years ago, transformed the company by using its balance sheet. They had a lot of cash on hand to buy Bitcoin. And so instead of the stock being valued on its actual software business, which had been languishing, it's valued as a holder of Bitcoin. But as Bitcoin has risen and MicroStrategy's stock has gone up, it's created an opportunity for them to issue convertible bonds and debt to acquire more Bitcoin. What's been novel is that they've issued these debt securities for almost no interest cost, essentially zero interest bonds. And so they're funding this without having to actually pay for the interest expense. Now, you might think that this is a little bit reckless, but it turns out it's a very novel strategy because they have created a lot of network value. They're one of the largest holders of Bitcoin now, and ultimately they may become the second largest holder of Bitcoin after the US government. And they're doing this with the ability to borrow at very low cost. You might wonder, why are bondholders buying these bonds? They're offering for the first time the ability for someone to put $1 billion of work in the bond world to own a bond that has exposure to Bitcoin. These have been incredibly high-performing bonds. They've been the best performing bonds. So they've helped bond managers outperform by buying typical corporate bonds, but then with this upside in crypto. And so I think that this works unless Bitcoin itself doesn't have a promising future. I think Michael Saylor has not only done something brilliant, but over time, when they do accumulate enough Bitcoin, they're actually going to be able to do quite a lot of novel things with it, whether it's lending Bitcoin or helping some financial system secure Bitcoin as sort of the anchor of that network. MicroStrategy is going to be one of the few companies that has a large holding of Bitcoin that you can actually tap. So it's a very, I kind of applaud the strategy. So I think that there is a lot of upside.
Okay, well, I think he articulated pretty well what he's doing. He's borrowing from the bond market with convertible bonds. In other words, bonds that are convertible into shares of MicroStrategy that have almost no interest attached to them. So while he's potentially diluting the stock in the future, it's not costing him anything on a current basis because the interest rate is either nothing or very low. This to me, smacks of a leveraged bet on Bitcoin, which is exactly what it is. It's a leverage bet on Bitcoin. I think the only positive about it is that the people he's promoting are essentially institutional investors. So, he's not taking money from the moms and pops of the world. He's doing it with institutions, which supposedly should know better. But for some reason, these are bondholders that want exposure to Bitcoin. And I'm sure they have their portfolio reasons for that. Probably they view it as being non-correlated to other assets that they have exposure to. But it's still a leverage bet on speculation, okay? And since I don't have the details of specifically how much leverage he's putting on this, we don't know how dangerous it is. But, you can imagine if Bitcoin suddenly goes down by 50%, we might have a situation where the leverage is greater than the asset value. So, I don't know. My gut tells me I don't like the sound of this. It sounds too good to be true. When I hear somebody comparing it to Manhattan real estate in the 1600s and just saying buy it at any price, it doesn't matter because it's going to be higher in the future. and there's a questionable argument as to what the intrinsic value is. I mean, it smacks of all of the things that we've seen down through history where we've had Ponzi schemes and all kinds of speculative excesses that once the assumptions change, the whole thing unwinds and it comes crashing down. Okay? So, I don't know. We explored it together here. We looked at Michael Saylor himself, what he thinks, and we looked at Tom Lee's explanation of it. I've gave my comments. I hope you found this useful. I learned something, and it definitely focused me in a lot more on my understanding of what Michael Saylor is actually doing with Microstrategy. And I didn't learn any more really about Bitcoin because he didn't really say anything about the value associated with Bitcoin. He just talked about how great it was and how it was going to be higher in the future. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you got value out of it, please like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next video.